Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there. Welcome back.
Yeah, as always, guys, check in daily. All three channels will do our best to keep you guys abreast of what is happening out there. And we had some fun with this one yesterday over on EEARTS, Controllers, Plans, and Our History Hidden in Plain Sight. You know, I know it's pretty obvious for so many to see stuff in the movies, but also in the music and in the old-time music videos. It's all kind of right there. I think people don't realize that they have an ability to channel. You know, anybody can channel. Anybody can channel. And again, the more, it depends on where your frequency is, who you're going to channel. That is for sure, too.
Yes, definitely. I mean, there's some people who are in really bad places, and yes, they're going to channel entities that are not very nice. So you would want to have your energy field kind of clean and have a good practice so you can get the higher ups is definitely where you want to be, because that actually feels really, really good.
Oh, absolutely. And on Heart's Home last night, we uploaded one that was about the path of loving devotion, Bhakti Yoga, as Bhakti is said to be the easiest path and perhaps the best path in a dark age. Okay, here we go. Again, truck carrying over 20,000 pounds of toxic soil out of the train derailment zone in East Palestine, Ohio, crashed Monday evening, spilling about half its contents in onto the roadway. So about 20,000 pounds spilled. It was carrying 40,000 pounds of contaminated soil. As Cindy said, what are they trying to do? Spread the opposite of the love. Yes, they're just trying to spread the toxicity. Was it really, whoops? Did he just, now again, too, recognize, yeah, you could have a whoops, but then it could be a whoops that's under the influence of certain entities and energies.
I mean, how many coincidences do we need to see that this has just been one huge mistake or accident after another, after another, after another? It's very unnecessary, and I definitely see energy issues going on.
This is again one of those stories, situations, and events that just doesn't go away. It keeps coming back. So when we look at where it spilled, it was in Columbiana County. As you see, this is the county over here, and here is East Palestine. So it just basically made it a little bit westward and then spilled. Let's put out our prayers and intentions that it'll be cleaned up quickly. And over here we see multiple agencies on the scene to a massive dairy farm explosion in Dimmitt, Texas. Multiple agencies, emergency crews on the scene, confirm multiple casualty incident, South Fork Dairy, and this is in Castro County in Dimmitt, Texas, releasing a big plume. Cows did lose their lives. One person was seriously injured. Other people were injured as well, so we send our prayers out there as well. And what do you think? A dairy farm? Yeah, this is going to be, and look what we were talking about recently. It's all the buzz about there being certain stuff in your milk and your yogurt and your dairy products. There are going to be some farmers that aren't going to go along with what the powers that be want. And perhaps this is what happens when you don't go along. Again, this is the area here. This is up, it's southwest of Amarillo, Texas. We've been through this area before, in between Amarillo and Lubbock. Yes, just another day here. And we have this question. How many more? Massive rally plan to urge Texas to make border invasion declaration a reality. Oh, yeah, we've been completely invaded. As we've shared, there's over 100,000 from the information that we've got that have not the greatest intentions and are here for a purpose, not just in Texas, but all over the country. But at the same time, probably in proportion, there's probably more proportionately in Texas than perhaps any other state.
I mean, just looking at this picture, it looks like these people are tired. They are exhausted, and maybe they do want to get to make their lives better. But so many of the other photos we have seen, it's been mostly people who are very well groomed, taken care of. They look well rested, and they know their mission. So it's a very mixed up type of energy, and that's just something that they do on a regular basis just to keep the chaos going, so nobody has any real direct answers. Of course, you always want to help people when you are able. You don't want to bring people in without resources, because that's just plain flat being cruel. People are better off rooted where they can grow or sustain themselves, instead of uprooting them and promising them something that is really not there.
So this large rally is planned to demand that the Texas legislature increase the state's ability to enforce immigration law to defend its border with Mexico against an invasion by the cartels and others, let's just say. And again, it's just again, so much of it's good, but it's too little, too late at this point. And it's just a matter of when everything becomes mobilized and clearly recognized, and everything goes to a different level. So we have a massive volcanic eruption that sends ash cloud up 12 miles into the sky. This is over in Kamchatka, which is a very, very active region. Now, this released the most ash coming back to the ground that we've seen in 60 years, and it went 60,000 feet up. This is a big one. This is a real big one. Now, this is well north of the equator, and this will obviously be just another thing to impact us. It is interesting to note all the volcanic activity. There's been a lot of volcanic activity lately. It will keep increasing, and I know there's lots of thoughts on that. It's not the only one going off, not even in that particular area. There's more than one going off. This is Popo this morning. This is in Mexico, a pretty big explosion and eruption. And just get an idea of this. Now, this is the widest of all the volcanoes in the Canary Islands. Can you imagine the destruction when that went off? This is a mile-wide crater. Now, the Canaries are very close to the equator. They're much, much, much more close to the equator than that is in Russia, in Kamchatka. So these can have a much more profound effect on cooling the planet off when something goes in this area. And the other thing too is, if it did have a big eruption, you're surrounded by water, so there is most definitely the potential for big tsunami. And when we talk about big tsunami and the Canaries, then that gets us thinking of La Palma. And it certainly could be a day, what was the name of that? How the World Ends, that Netflix movie, How the World Ends scenario, when something like that goes, or Cascadia goes. French avalanche in the Alps kills 6 on Easter Sunday. Again, we've talked about record snowpack in so many areas, and of course the skiers love it, but it does come with danger.
Oh, it does. Just be very, very careful out there. Mother Nature is vast, and she can do a lot of destruction, and just a little bit of, a little bit of caution probably goes a long, long way.
So Anchorage, Alaska breaks the April snow record. March across the U.S. was 2.91 degrees Fahrenheit below average, almost 3 degrees below average. And the USDA crop planting report is dismal, is their words. And again, this is talking about that avalanche. And I'll give you guys all the links as always. So, Alaska breaking the snow records. California was breaking them. Utah was breaking them massively too. And then when we look at all the different crop reports coming in, it's pretty darn miserable. Now, it's fascinating to note too, that Russia's had bumper harvests, and that China has stored, in some cases of certain grains, 60% of the world's storage is sitting in China. Everything is completely planned out. And again, where we here in the U.S. have had it pretty easy, but it seems like karma's coming around to slap us in the butt pretty quickly. And it seems like with everything that's going on this time, with all the disasters and everything, it does feel like the U.S. is not going to escape, but actually be, the X marks the spot. Remember the two eclipses? X marks the spot. Yeah, we're at the bullseye. The bullseye is over us.
And, when I look at that area and read that energy, that really is such a heart chakra of the United States. It's somewhere that's very, very vulnerable. This is not a good thing.
No, again, and as we are, let's see, April 8th, 2024, we're less than a year, guys. Less than a year away from this second X marks the spot. Less than a year. Yeah, I think, again, 2023, as the guides have said, this year is all going to be about steady building. You're going to see things constantly building, less of a let off, less of a gap between events. And this is exactly what we're seeing. Yeah, at the same time, you're not going to see the culmination of everything this year. No, this year is all just constantly building. I would say 2024 is the year of explosion, the year when everything just completely hits the fan. It's like we thought it hit the fan. No, it hasn't hit the fan yet. That's a sobering thought. But when we look at all these different reports, not good, not good. If you look at spring wheat, only 1% has been seeded, usually 4% by now. So that's not a good percentage. Typically, 15% of the crops put in the ground. Texas has 48% in, which is below norm, barely a 2% increase. None of the plain states have been able to start planting yet. Corn, again, it's all not looking too good. So again, have your backup plan, be able to do what you can to provide for yourselves. Again, if you have stored organic beans, you can grow beans from your organic beans in mass. There's some things that nature gives us, that nature has provided for in such a way that we could have more than we could ever use. More. I mean, how many of you have planted squash? I'm sure, right? Sometimes, you overplant squash plants. They produce so dang much that you can't use them all. You're looking to give them away. Hey, you want some squash? Look at the size of this one. That type of thing. Mother Nature would totally provide. The system doesn't like that.
No, I mean, you can get so many hundreds of seeds out of just one plant, and I know so many people who are definitely saving their seeds and saving them for trade too. A lot of people are looking around to see, okay, how can I sustain myself in my area? And there's a lot of little side things that you can do to be able to provide for those in your area, because we might go through a little bit of a patch where it is all just going to be trade. And actually, I look at that as an opportunity for those who don't want to be in the system to take a nice big step out of it.
So all hell broke loose in Baltimore the other night. You had over 200 people gathered together, and then all of a sudden shooting and chaos started and people scattered everywhere. This is just a sign of the times. Are people acting erratic? Is the behavior illogical? Is it chaotic? Absolutely. And again, the influence that's out there is cultivating it, unfortunately. Whole Foods closes its flagship San Francisco store just after a year due to employee safety concerns. Yeah, this is why, again, I understand not everybody could leave the cities, but those that could, and that's who we're speaking to, those that could, even if it appears, dangerous or what have you, or tough to manifest it, the fact that you probably would be better off when the chaos really hits being outside of the cities. But the countryside does have its dangers too, and yes, absolutely, the snakes, the bugs, and many other factors can be scary as well. But again, trying to provide for yourself as much as possible and working with neighbors is going to be the thing that's going to get us through these times. California's had so many people leaving. Here they are offering to front. They're going to front you 20% down payments with zero interest for home buyers with incomes up to $211,000. This seems like a desperate act, but it probably is a desperate act as people are leaving California in droves. California and New York have been losing people faster than any other states. So think about that. Hey guys, don't buy your house over there. Stay here. Stay here. We'll give you your 20% down payment. No interest in right now. The home mortgage rates are very high relatively to what we've had. Wow, this is an act of desperation, is it not?
And then I have heard that they're working on laws to pass where even if you do move out and move your everything out of California, they're going to still try to tax you. So, it's moves of desperation, and it's because the political structure there, they really do. They live off the backs of people. So they have to tax everywhere they can get away with. And a lot of people think, well, it matters. You just got to vote the right people in and the right people out. No, there's a structure in place, and it doesn't matter if you vote in Mickey Mouse. You're still going to be, the taxes are still going to be horrendous because these people all kind of have a pact to make sure that they have a certain amount of income, no matter what.
Yeah, I was looking at a map yesterday that was showing, and I could see if I could get it for you guys for maybe another video. It was showing that the population of about 9 different states equals less than what's in California in the West. So, you could take Arizona, New Mexico, you could add Colorado, Utah, Idaho to the mix, Washington, Oregon, and that population doesn't make up what's in California, but that's rapidly changing. It's rapidly changing as people are leaving it in droves for the taxation and the political, and also just the crime too, as things are escalating. Turkey says its Black Sea natural gas discoveries are worth $500 billion. More than $500 billion. Now, isn't it interesting that that's kind of the center point of this whole Ukrainian war? You have, the Black Sea right there, and right now there's some major counteroffensive supposedly underway in Ukraine by Crimea, and $500 billion with natural gas discoveries, and enough natural gas to supply all the households in Turkey for 35 years, or everybody globally, I think is how we're looking at this, 15 to 20 years. No, the industry, okay, so commercial as well, 15 to 20 years. But the reality is there are even other alternatives that have been totally suppressed. Totally. France has already surrendered to the coming conflict. They bowed the knee, to give you Game of Thrones terminology. Macron has bowed the knee. Yeah, well, these guys, they're buddies. Come on. They all go to the same clubs, etc., etc. Those clubs for the few and far between, yes. But, again, Cindy sees it a little differently than I see it. And this is, one of the only areas where we don't see eye to eye exactly. And it could be because her frequency is higher than mine in some ways. And she never gets the pictures of the conflict. But the guides have come through and said that's what you're for, because she can't see it. Where I've always seen the conflict going back to around 83, 84. I've always seen the conflict, but I don't think the conflict's long, honestly. And in some ways, it seems like it's going to sneak up on us and probably be over way quicker than we think. If you're thinking that movie scenario of Red Dawn and a prolonged, warfare out in the hills and stuff, I think it's going to be a little different than that. Yeah, I mean, there could be pockets. There's always pockets, and NAZI Germany in the occupied countries that they occupied, like Poland and many others, and they weren't in every single town. They were in the major towns, the major cities. Control the major cities, and yeah, if you have 1,000-acre farm, you're going to be a target. If you have, a couple acres somewhere off and you could support yourself in the middle of nowhere, you're probably not going to get, picked on, and they probably won't confiscate unless you're directly on a route that they're going to be driving up and down on. This is, again, part of what to take in and keep in mind. But yeah, France economically already surrendered, I should say. Yes, we're all kind of surrounded. As we see the yuan displacing the dollar on the Moscow exchange, Chinese currency now has the largest share by volume in forex trading. Yeah, and this is all part of it. The big shift is underway. It's totally underway. And, if you don't see it, I mean, I see it. I am addicted to music, and I follow a lot of guitar-related channels and things. That's pure enjoyment for me. One thing I see is like the disparity in the pricing, even between, say, the British pound and the U.S. dollar. It seems like the dollar is losing value, and that's to be expected. The dollar, when ruble is rubbish, means dollar is dead. And they are dumping the dollar. This is all part of what every geopolitical analyst that really understands conflict has said has to happen before there's any sort of direct confrontation. There has to be a total decoupling away from the old system, and they're recoupling with the new. And the new is going to be the yuan. So yes, we are watching the digital dollar, but even the digital dollar, that might be just a flash in the pan, as the U.S. will end up getting, basically carved up and handed off to different areas.
Mm-hmm. I really think it's going to be somewhere between what Mike sees and what I see, and how that's going to look. I can't tell you, because that's one thing about reading energy. It's like you do look at it through your perspective, and you might get all the right parts, but it turns out to be a different piece, or it turns out to be a different mold or something else, but you have all the right information. So we'll see how that's going to go. I'm looking at this where technology is going to be the thing that's like ratcheting people down. It's going to be a tie into the technology, and possibly medicine, people who can't get out of the medicine system. But definitely look for natural alternatives. Do a lot of your own work. Be your own physician. Find new things, because I think that's going to be necessary. I don't see where things like medicine, there might be a hiccup there for a little bit. So you'd want to be able to have the things that you need in between that hiccup of services.
And we talked about this yesterday, about China's reach in Latin America and the Caribbean. So like there's so many countries, most of the countries of the world we can view at in the light of, they're not really in the spotlight when you're talking about the global situation, yet in some ways they're the foundation point upon which the rest of the world is standing. And so, when you look at what's gone on and the shifting, the Belt and Road Initiative, don't forget that. China's inlaid everything they've had to be the next global superpower. Yet it's still, they're themselves just a means to an end. And the signs are there that, China won't really have that. They won't have as long of a reign, let's say, as what the U.S. has had in being really the policeman of the power structure globally, the policeman and the military. Because truly, we are going to much more of a global system, and then it's going to shift again, and that shift will blow people's minds. And because that's the part from the Bible where it says the day of the Lord will make men's knees weak. And it's not a good day, and it even says that in the Bible. You don't want that. But at the same time, those that are able to raise their vibrations up, you're going to be out of reach. You are going to be out of reach. And it's understanding the bigger purpose here. Egypt secretly planned to supply rockets to Russia, so says a leaked U.S. document. Yeah, interesting. Produce up to 40,000 rockets to be covertly shipped to Russia, so says a leaked U.S. intelligence document. Yeah, basically the bulk of the world has ditched the U.S. and NATO. And when we look to NATO right now, it's got its greatest outreach right now, most countries ever. But NATO is going to rapidly collapse and disintegrate before our eyes. And it could be that, yeah, there might not be any shots fired in some areas and a quick bowing of the knee, okay, we give, just, again, throwing that fight, being paid off. But I do think there will be fighting because they're always looking for loot. This is just part of who they are. And as you see these explosions, this one happens to be by a gold mine. Yeah. The Azerbaijan and Armenia, divided again by their religions, by their dogma. And, again, they've been united at times and divided by times. But again, it's just part of the system. And this could be, again, one of those big flaring points, as we have seen masses of Iranian armaments and troops having war games. And war games can rapidly turn into mobilization and attack, or mobilization and defense from an attack. And, we've seen a lot of Iranian hardware heading in this direction. And when we look at this too, this is a crossroads area. This is a key crossroads area. I still think to me, it makes sense that next year is the kickoff of the big conflict, even though everything has been, all the boxes have been checked off. So technically, yeah, the greater war could start any moment. And some would argue it's already underway. But when I say it could start any moment, that's when, hey guys, we're at war, and it's just openly admitted, and there's open conflict, the U.S. firing on Chinese targets, Russian targets, Russia and China and others fighting on U.S. and other NATO nations' targets. And you might have a bunch of NATO nations all of a sudden withdraw and invite in troops. A lot of people have brought up, too, in the past, the blue helmets. Will the blue helmets come and save the day? Well, obviously, they're not going to save the day. But, save the day for the control system. Oh, yeah, that could be. But what if there is some sort of gigantic, massive natural disaster, or a series of natural disasters in the U.S. that leaves it unable to really defend itself? And the UN does come in to help the U.S., quote unquote, help in quotation marks. Again, I do think they gave us a lot of clues with the movie How the World Ends, or How It Ends. How It Ends, right?
Yeah,
How It Ends. I can't remember the actor that was in it, but it was curious because it felt very resonant with perhaps a very likely timeline that will be very confusing, and that's always something. Order out of chaos and confusion. BBC protests as Twitter labels it government-funded media. Okay, now the BBC is government-funded media. See? RT was labeled government-funded media. The power shift's already happened. It's already happened. It's just a matter of it being carried out. Britain's top police force has 161 convicted criminals on its books. Oh, honey, don't call the police. It's full of ex-cons. No, we got to do this on our own, I guess, because, we don't want to invite an ex-con into the house.
No, and that's really frustrating, and it's one of the things in society I think is the most downgrading to people, because they do have this kind of fellowship, which isn't bad, but too many times I've seen this fellowship of watching one another's back go to a place where they're enabling one another to do things that aren't nice to other people, just to keep whatever power structure they have in place. And that's really a problem. And, we have to be the ones who are upstanding enough and handle as much of our own issues as we can. Things don't always have to go to the police. Things don't always have to go to court. When we are in our phase where we're able to be, big enough to have conversations with our neighbors or other people, then we're really getting somewhere. And I think that's a symptom of a society that's moving up in vibration, when people can actually sit and have conversations with one another and not always be offended. To me, that might show that there's some healing going on throughout all the trauma.
And we had an M-class flare, some new active regions, minor geomagnetic disturbances. The KP's been relatively low, between 1 and 3 for the most part. So relatively quiet at this point in time. There was a blackout on the Schumann resonance, lasted for 35 hours. I've seen these in the past, so it is something that does happen. It's interesting over here, their little blurb in the red. They're going to be forced to implement new EU, UK rules on data management, and so again, it's killing their ad revenue and basically choking out the information. And this is what's been going on with us too the entire time. After all, this is the apocalypse, and it is a zombie apocalypse in more ways than one. Many of you guys might have seen this dead bug, hollowed out, moving. That gets me thinking about that Judas Priest song again from we were talking about yesterday, with mankind resurrected forever to survive. But that's no type of surviving. No, but they could keep you going. They could just keep replacing parts. They could keep you going. But is it really even you? And why would you? Because the natural order of things is that we use the body as a vehicle for a while, then we let it go. We let it go, and we process, and then we move forward again, because we already are eternal. We're consciousness. This looks like the phoenix rising. It's an erupting volcano, but isn't that cool? Doesn't it look like a phoenix?
I just thought that was a really beautiful, stunning picture, and we gotta remember that phoenix rising has a whole lot of symbology to it. Not all good, not all bad, but what does it mean for you?
Well, Kitty wants in. Kitty says, I want in. Let me in, guys. Let me in.
Isn't that the cutest thing? The little pitter patter of little feet. I know we do have family members that have kitties that actually, when they turn our show on, they turn our video on, the kitty's up there watching every bit of our show. And that's just so adorable.
Well, that's because animals, again, they feel frequency. So they feel our energy. And this is one of the reasons why Cindy and I have had so many what would be termed paranormal experiences all our lives, because our energy is a little bit different than typical, because we have activated light bodies, activated pineal glands, and they know that we can see, sense, and feel them, and so it makes them very curious. And this has actually even drawn different extraterrestrials in, especially when we were out in the desert in the middle of nowhere. Interesting encounters can be had for all. Here you have shopkeepers letting a bird take sanctuary in a hailstorm. That's a beautiful thing. The kitty wanted it in, and it looked nice outside. Now that didn't look nice, but they let the bird in to shelter. Isn't that beautiful? Humanity should always be like that.
I mean, we all have these emotions. I think we tend to maybe look at animals and think, they're just a little bit different creature. But no, they are just like we are. They have emotions. They ask for help. They try to, blend with the herd around them. They just want to be part of. Isn't that's sweet that these people can read it? And so many times when we're working on people, if there's cats in the house, they're going to come and they're going to sit right on that heart chakra, because they know where the good stuff is at.
Absolutely. So guys, as always, we want to thank you for your support over on Patreon and also on Ko-Fi. We couldn't do it without you. Do check out Medicinal Foods. There's a link on every video, and use coupon code EEA. It does give you a discount as well. Thank you for sharing the videos as well. Trying to wake up as many as possible. Much love. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.